Go. Hey Andy, welcome to the Leaders Lab.
Oh, Ken, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to our discussion. This will be great.
I know it's really I don't know, like right when we got on pre-show, I was like I think I could talk to this guy for a long time, so I better hit record before we say too much. But Andy, I guess, for my own kind of, selfish purposes, but then for the audience, like I want to know a little bit about you first. So, you didn't just get to the point where you're training hundreds of thousands of people all over the world. Where did this start? Where are you from? How did your career get going?
Well,
You can start wherever you
I'll
want.
I'll confess, if a person watching feels that they're a pretty average guy, they'll resonate with me. And if you could see me in my early days, that would give everyone a tremendous amount of hope. I will
Yeah.
tell you that. Very average guy. You know, I, I, I I've been fortunate to hang out with a lot of elite people and be running a lot of elite circles. And I'll just tell everyone right now, once you really get to know people, they put their pants on one leg at a time. So I'm
Sure.
I'm a very basic guy with my feet on the ground. I grew up with great parents, like a lot of people do. My father was an educator, so not a lot of money there. My mom decided she wanted to be very traditional and stay home and raise the kids. So on one income, teacher salary on the low end, they did great, and they taught us great lessons. My parents are great people, and a lot of large family. And the one thing though, growing up, I watched my parents struggle, particularly my mother, where she would worry about making ends meet. She was kind of in charge of paying bills, and I'd see that stress, and I really never wanted to have to worry about that. I'm a worrier. I worry too much and too much anxiety, I
Yeah.
guess. So I was really interested in how wealth was built. My dad had an old beat up VW van, and we drive around, I'd see big houses or big businesses. Like, how do these guys do this? Because when I went to school, they're not showing me how to do this. And
Right.
how does the physics and the math and the geography, turn into this?
Right.
So I've always been a student of financial education and not a lot of talents. I went to school. I remember looking at that catalog, Ken, accounting, biology, communications, all the way down to zoology, A to Z. Nothing lit me up. Not
Yeah.
one thing impassioned me. But I was a big guy, about 6'8", and I couldn't jump, I couldn't shoot, I could foul.
Yeah.
So they put me on the team and got some of my school paid for. And when that was all over, I had no idea what to do. Newly married, didn't know what to do. Got lucky, kind of had the gift of gab, wasn't afraid of speaking with people, so I got into sales and did extremely well. Just found a niche like a duck in water, just really good with
What were you selling?
building value. Well, that's kind of interesting. I'd sell everything under the sun. I mean, I would try stuff just for fun. I remember one day I took a job for one day selling water softeners door to door just to see if I could do it.
Yeah.
And after the day, I says, "Yeah, I think I could do it, but I don't want to do that one anymore." So I sold everything under the sun. There was software in the 1990s, and this is where things really changed for me. So in the 90s, they come out with online trading. And they had every platform and software in the world, day traders and all this crazy stuff. And I was approached by a company. I didn't have a trading account. I just read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. This is in the 90s. Just read that book. My wife and I thought we were going to be real estate investors and conquer the world like everyone that reads that book believes, and a lot of it's true. A lot of people find their way in that. And this company approached me, said, "Hey, we have this software. You're a pretty good salesman. You want to pitch our software?" I said, "Yeah, I'll pitch your software. Don't know anything about investing, but I'll give it a shot." And man, I started learning about it, and I thought, "Wow, this is actually pretty cool." And lost a ton of money, making mistakes early. Lost a ton, like ouch, like hurt stuff.
Right.
But I started being asked to speak on the topic because I can put a star on your Christmas tree. I can change your light bulb. That's about the limit of my talents. But I had one more I was lucky to have is I have a way to make things simple. So I didn't become a teacher back in those days because I was beating Warren Buffett in an investing
Right.
contest. Not even, few beat him. But I did have that one little everyone, we all have equal but different talents. The people listening, they have talents more than I do. But that idea of simplification, people found value in that. And they said, wow, this guy, once he can understand it, he can explain it to me. So we started the Cashflow Academy. Kim Kiyosaki is the one that told me to do it. I spent 15 years on their advisor team, traveling the world, teaching people. And early on, very early, Kim pulled me aside, said, Andy, do you like to teach? I says, I love it. She says, well, if that's your calling, that's what you should do every day. Buffett never retired. He loves to invest every day. He's 90, whatever. And she says, could you see yourself doing that in your 90s? I said, man, if I can walk, I'll do it. So she said,
Nice.
start an academy. And so I did. And very blessed, very fortunate. We did that in 2007-ish, I think. So today we've just got great students, and I'm very uncomfortable, Ken, in being referred to as an expert or guru because I feel like I'm a student every day.
Sure.
And I'm learning more every year about investing. I guess the difference is I make a lot fewer mistakes nowadays than I did before, but I'll still
Sure.
make some, I imagine. So that's me, just a very regular guy. Love my family, love my kids. Father first. Father and husband's number one job. After that, we do a little teaching, we do a little investing, do a little writing, and that's it.
That's cool. That's really cool. When you started your academy, are you still affiliated with Rich Dad Poor Dad? Is it like an extension
100%.
of kind of, yeah,
Robert, for a lot of years, we had six people that he called the Rich Dad Advisors, and we would all travel together because all of us could do it. And it was volunteer. We just volunteered our time. And it really was, everyone thought it was about teaching because they'd see us on stage and we always traveled together. But for me, it was really about learning. Robert is an insatiable learner. I've never met a human being that was more curious and wanting to learn the next thing. So when we would study a book, we would pick a book about every 6 months, and you wouldn't read it, you studied it. We had rules for study, we had protocols for study, and we would convene for like 3 days after studying the book. And what did the author say? What did he teach us? And we would have these intense, small groups of study with just a very dedicated groups of people. And then we take what we learn and go out and teach it. And it was about personal development. We had a code. I quit traveling, about 3 or 4 years ago. My wife got breast cancer, and my kids got into high school playing basketball. So I've taken a hiatus from traveling because for me, father's number one. So
sure.
my one son is a senior, my other son's a sophomore. So I have 2 or 3 more years of basketball, and then maybe we'll go out and teach again. But Robert Kiyosaki and Kim Kiyosaki are two of the best teachers I've ever known, and I do anything they ask me to do, for sure. So I honor the I'm always remiss. I would be remiss if I didn't just give those guys tons of credit. And that Rich Dad mission is same mission you and I have. It's to elevate the financial well-being of all humanity, whoever you are.
So
So, and we do that through financial education.
when you were working with them, so sort of 2007 and prior, because they're not paying you, very similar to work we do with Tony Robbins, stuff like that, where you
Yeah,
show up to serve, right? You show and to learn, right? Like you said, being in the environment is so impactful, personally.
for
But how
sure.
did you pay the bills? Trading, or did you do other things
Oh,
as well?
I've always been pretty fortunate as a young age. I mentioned that I was a pretty good salesman,
Yeah,
so I really did well early in my life. I
yeah,
was just very lucky. Well, not all luck. I studied how to do it. I had a natural knack for it, but I did study, how sales worked a lot, and
yeah.
I practiced a lot. When I was playing basketball in college, I was probably the worst basketball player in the history of that school. But I did appreciate, I learned so much in that class. I learned about practice and the importance that it's not on Sunday when you golf, it's the other 6 days of the week, right? It is huge. So I practiced a lot. So I was fortunate to begin investing where I could afford to lose some money. and I've always had my own consulting business, my own businesses. So I've been so lucky never to be so thin that we were worried about ever having to, pay the bills, so to
Sure.
speak.
Sure.
Doesn't mean I haven't lost money in business. I've lost insane amounts of money. If my mother knew, how many business mistakes I'd made. And, real estate's been good to me. My wife and I, as I mentioned, when we read Rich Dad Poor Dad, we went and, started to acquire real estate. So assets have been important. Business has been important. My active income is reduced as I've gotten older and more assets.
Sure.
And also to be fair, we Robert was about the mission. And so he says, look, if you're showing up here for a paycheck, we're not interested in having you around. But we pick our advisors based on those that want to serve and serve the mission. But at
Sure.
the same time, I wasn't blind to the fact that the opportunity to serve on that team and the opportunity to learn from those guys and the affiliation is, I mean, that's worth a lot. Because it brings a lot of credibility to what you do.
Totally.
And so I wasn't lost on that at all. So it was a tremendous, I was so blessed. I remember Robert, when he approached me the first time, he had an event in Phoenix. And it was a pretty intimate event, maybe 200 or 300 people is all over the world, some of his best students all over the world. And he wanted someone to talk about stocks. And I had kind of built a little name for myself, I suppose, as a stock guy. And his assistant Kathy called and said, hey, we understand that you're a stock teacher and presenter, and that you often use the rich dad principles when you teach. And I thought they're going to sue me. I've been teaching cash flow quadrants and
Yeah.
cash flow games, and I thought they're going to sue me. And it was actually quite the opposite. They said, Robert, would like to have you come speak at this event. And I knew it was an important one. So I worked really hard on that speech, and it worked out okay. And, as we talked about 401ks, the problems with those, and he said, why don't you be on my advisor team? And I said, Robert, that's so above my pay grade. I said, I'm still learning. I'm really young,
Yeah.
and you guys are so established. He says, yeah, but you're a teacher, and that's what we do. And come learn with us. And I didn't realize it wasn't an invitation to teach.
Right.
It was an invitation to join an elite student group, is really what it was. I didn't understand it. So, absolutely life changing for my children to travel the world, with Uncle Robert, as they say. Absolutely phenomenal. He would take my children. We were in Argentina once, and my kids learned the cash flow game. They really played it a lot. They got really good at the cash flow game. So they had a unique financial education. Not that they're geniuses. They're not. My kids are as average as any other kids. They're not geniuses. All kids are really geniuses. It's just that it wasn't that they ascended to a great height. It's that Robert and Kim brought the edge, and the other advisors brought the education down
Yeah.
to them. It wasn't that they ascended. It's that the education was brought down. And so he'd call them up, like we were in Argentina or Australia. He'd call them up on stage and have them diagram infinite return investments in real estate. It's just crazy
Nice.
stuff. And so it's really changed their lives. My kids invest, even though they're just in high school. They maintain their own accounts and sell the options, and we'll see where it goes for them. I don't know what they'll do yet. They're still kids. So
What
it's
did
been great.
you mentioned kind of with emphasis when you got into trading in the 90s, you took a little pause and said, yeah, and I lost a little money. And then you were like, I got hurt, I got hurt. So how did you get hurt? I mean, lack of education probably, but like what were you doing and what were some of your big
Oh,
mistakes that you made back then?
so yeah, let me share some of that with you. And the thing that got hurt the most is the pride. I've never gotten upset about losing money per se because I know it can be remade. What really hurts is the pride. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like so stupid. Hindsight 2020. When people decide, and you're in the personal development space with Tony Robbins, so you get this. When people decide to become an entrepreneur or an investor, many of them think they're seeking wealth and freedom and a better financial, in the strata they want to move up, right? They want a better life. What they rarely realize, at least I didn't, and most of my students come to realize this, is that you're actually embarking in a journey of personal development.
Mm-hmm.
So, what does that really mean, personal development? Well, you mentioned was a lack of education. Sometimes I have this thing I use called the education continuum, where we go from ignorance to awareness. Like there's the stuff we don't know about, and now we know about it. Often males more than women, but even women fall into this. Once someone becomes aware, they think they're competent.
Mm.
Well, competency means I can get an A on the test, but proficiency is where you can do it. And so as you move along that continuum from not being ignorant of, let's say I don't know what a 1031 exchange is. Well, then I become aware, but I'm not ready to do one. Well, maybe I can pass the test, but only when I can do it 4 or 5 times in real life am I proficient. So I move along from ignorance to awareness to competency to proficiency. Well, that can be in many areas. Another part of if you become an investor and you determine to style yourself as an entrepreneur, it has a way of finding the chinks in your armor that's just
Right.
amazing, like tailored to you. Whatever your weakness is, it's going to find it and it's going to show it to the whole world. It's
Yeah.
going to put it on display
Yeah.
because you will stumble and fall in front of everybody. So my mistakes, if I go back, number one, sometimes there you can notice a gap between ignorance and knowledge. In other words, I'm ignorant, and if I had knowledge, I'd perform better. Well, what is between that gap? It's education closes that gap. But in my life, equally frustrating and more so, and I bet you found the same, there's often a gap between my knowledge, I know what I'm doing, and my behavior.
Yeah.
For example, in college, I didn't know what I want to do, so they threw me an exercise physiology major. Well, we can all see that did not work out too well. So I know in that Ben and Jerry's, I almost named my kids Ben and Jerry. I know in that Ben and Jerry, there's 320% of the daily saturated fat I need or whatever. I know that, but sometimes my behavior is not congruent with what I know. So there's a discipline issue. Sometimes in my life, I've made mistakes with inconsistency. I've made mistakes with a loss of focus. I've made mistakes where I've been prideful and thought I knew more than I would. That's probably cost. You say pride comes before the fall. That's probably cost me as much money as anything else. Doing things above my pay grade, knowledge wise, discipline wise, just not there yet.
Hmm.
But that's kind of how you get there. You
Yeah.
step in that outside that circle and you get bit and you realize, okay, I've got some growing to do.
Well,
Emotionally is probably the worst weakness I've had is I'm a very emotional person, very empathetic where other people's problems become mine. Um, Learning to control my emotions and master those emotions is something I still fight it a little bit, not like I used to, but you can't be a great investor if you're reacting emotionally.
right. Right.
And so yeah, I could go on. I mean, how much tape do you have if you want to talk about mistakes?
Yeah.
Um,
I know that you really specialize that, and I can tell just from getting to meet you for a few minutes here, that, yeah, you've got the gift of gab, you've got the gift of
yeah.
communication and breaking things down, I think in a simple way, right? Because I think a lot of financial educators maybe hang their ego or maybe get some significance over I've got something that's really secretive and tough and somehow if we pull back the curtain and explain it and say no anyone can do it, then it somehow in some people's eyes makes them feel like they've knocked themselves down a few pegs, right? And so I think your ability to talk about this stuff, when you're talking about the emotions of it, I think that's been my biggest problem. There's been times certainly early on where um, the emotional highs of doing well in a good market and letting that somehow manifest itself into my brain of I'm really good at this. You know what I mean? I'm really good at this. And it's like, well, in the early 2000s, everyone was pretty much
Oh,
good at this, right? For a while until we
yeah.
weren't. Same with now, probably in certain sectors, right? The stock market's been really, really solid. Where I got into trouble was a lot of what you're saying, which is I think going in above my pay grade, not fully understanding like options moves and going, I think I got it, but I think I got it is not great in an options play because the margins of error, I think, are very small, right? Sometimes, and produce very small errors that produce pretty drastic results sometimes, in a negative way. How did how did you lean since you're in this whole like kind of ecosystem of assets, right? Real estate,
Yeah.
stock, everything. How did you become the stock guy? Was it from that first time that they led you in, or is that just where you naturally went to as you started learning about it?
It's where I landed.
Yeah.
I don't own the type of real estate that say like a Than Merrill or a Kenny McElroy does. I mean, they've got billions under management, right? But I love my real estate, both the syndication and even single family homes. I love shorting the US dollar is really what you're doing. You're betting on the dollar to go down, really. It's not so much about the real estate that I care about, it's about the devaluation of the dollar. So in that asset class of real estate, I can't tell you where Apple's going in 10 years. I have no idea. Will they continue to innovate or will they peak out as a company can? I don't think they will, but I don't know. But if you ask me where the dollar's going in 10, 20, 30 years, oh, down. I mean, there's going to be inflation. You'll pay more for gas than 30 years ago than you did for sure.
Right.
So to be able to borrow money, trade it for an asset, trade that asset back into cash and pay it back, which is the four steps to a short position in order on the financial statement, to me is a no-brainer. I don't, my favorite asset class by far is business. I love writing books and selling them. I love creating education. I love business. I very much love stocks for this reason. Um, Stocks are such a beautiful asset if people really understood them. Robert hates stocks. He thinks, that they're not really sophisticated, and that's why I really love them because most people don't start sophisticated. Robert would rather take a company public than buy it after market. That's just where he's at, and I can't blame him. But think about this word for a minute, Ken, and I'll try to sell people. People should not. I feel very strongly about this. People should not engage in the argument of what asset class is the best one. Is gold better than Bitcoin? Is Bitcoin better than real estate? Is real estate better than stocks? Is business better than, that's such an asinine way to go because what it does is it creates a false context. And context is everything. So if my context is my success is a function of picking the right asset class, I'm in the wrong context because if you find success, if you're listening to this podcast and 5 years from now you start to find success, will that be a function of what asset class you picked or a function of your own personal development
Yeah.
in the skills related to that asset class? Because I can find winners and losers regardless of asset class, but the winners seem to have things in common regardless of asset class. So the reason I love stocks is this, and you're right. I think you put a nickel in me, you'll run out of tape. But I love to
No,
teach
it's
it.
all good.
So think about this: the word share. If you were to engage in an exercise to rank words, with your spouse, you say, what are the most important words? I'd say love is up there in my book. I'd rank that. That's a top five nominee. Truth for me it might be number one for me, even above love. Truth is in a post-truth era of so much rhetoric, being real and truthful. I think the word share is a top five nominee for me. Share and share alike. Just imagine this for a moment. Go in your garage, you and I will go in your garage together and we'll make a pact. We can't come out until we've built an iPhone. I'm never coming out. I'm not smart enough.
I'm with
I
you.
don't have the I don't have the genius to create an iPhone. Um, or let's build a Tesla. Let's do that. So here you have Steve Jobs, the late Steve Jobs. You have guys like Musk. You have guys, incredible entrepreneurs, and they say, "Hey, Andy, tell you what, I have all the genius. I have all the know-how. I know how to build them. I know how to distribute them around the world. I have all the IP. I have all the technology. I have all that. And I'll tell you what, I'll share it with you." I'll let you own part of my company. I'll share it with you. You can be what we call a shareholder. And when we make a profit, I will not only share my customers with you, share my IP with you, share my genius, my success, my business. I will take a portion of that and I will divide it equally among those shareholders, depending on how many shares you want. The opportunity for the average American or even global citizen to stand next to Elon Musk and own part of his genius and profit from it, to me, the opportunity to share in that is stupendous. The problem with one of the problems that the people have in our home country is they're starting to believe that sharing the money is what we should do. And that's silly. We should share the ownership
Mm-hmm.
is what we should do. For example, let's say I own ExxonMobil. I don't know anything about petroleum engineering, but let's say that I own ExxonMobil, and COVID comes along, and they're sending everyone a COVID check. Now you don't get one, and I don't get one because our income's too high. But everyone in the lower half gets a check from COVID, and they're going to take that cash and they're going to hand it to you. They're going to go buy some gas at an ExxonMobil station. They're going to hand it to you. So all that money that gets distributed goes back in the hands of the producers through Walmart, through Costco, through Exxon, through Apple, through Verizon, through AT&T, through Amex, all these companies that I own. And the money comes back into our pockets. What we should do is at a very young age, we should do what Robert Kiyosaki and Kim Kiyosaki did for my sons. We should inspire them to say, I want to own a piece of this world. Because that's all real estate is sharing. You have now a share of this. You've acquired a share. The gross domestic product, you can have a share of that productivity through stock ownership. You can have a share of it. And all Warren Buffett did, he never started a company. He bought Berkshire Hathaway. He bought Apple. He bought Coca-Cola. He bought Chevron. He bought Moody's. He bought Dairy Queen. He bought Fruit of the Loom. He bought Duracell. He bought Geico. He bought See's Candies. He bought these. And some he owns the whole thing, and some he just owns a share, but he bought them. He's not a Wall Street guy. He didn't pay for advice. And he just started in Omaha and still lives there and just started buying this stuff. And when that paid them, he used that money to buy more and compounded. The compounding available to a 13, 14-year-old kid in this country, if they start buying, whatever they like, Nike, who the hell cares?
Mm-hmm.
Just like, everyone's trying to find this perfect stock that I bought for $1 and went to 1,000. No, 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 no. Wouldn't you want to be the owner in Nike? Like
Right.
you guy pulls up in a Lambo. They say, what's he do? He goes, oh, he owns Nike. Oh, that's cool. Wouldn't you want to own Apple and Verizon and AT&T and T and Kraft Heinz and Dow Chemical? And wouldn't you want to own these elite companies? If you'll start young, you don't even have to be that good at it. The older you are, now you need more education. You gotta go faster.
Right.
So I love the idea of share. So that's my pitch on stock. The idea to own part of the gross domestic product of this country, the most prosperous one in the world. Who would not want to take a portion of their paycheck and do less working and more owning
Right.
via that transfer?
Well,
So,
don't you think, I mean, and you got on that by talking about when people are comparing different asset classes and, Bitcoin's better than this and like
mm-hmm.
whatever. And it is an asinine question because over what period of time, for what person's temperament, do you know what I mean? And so I think the question it's almost like, it almost implies that for the next 5 minutes, in their opinion, which is probably limited, that's the best investment for them. You know what I mean? But it's not,
Yeah.
the question itself is not a long-term question. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's how they're feeling right now, which comes back to emotions, which comes back to, I really like what you're saying, threaded in through our whole conversation is this is not a journey of education. Education's part of it. It's a journey of personal development. And in your personal development, you're going to get educated, right? But it's really a personal development journey. And I'm guessing that the people that you teach that evolve, the ones that evolve the most personally, just so happen to also evolve financially with that.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the mentors you work with, like I look at a guy like Tony, Tony Robbins. I think his strength is in that second gap where, I've seen him kind of process people. Someone will stand up, they're going through divorce, whatever it is. They know what to do. Their problem most of the time, like, okay, how do you lose weight? Eat less, move more. For his people, they're really not that uneducated. Usually he can pinpoint that they already know what they need to do. They just
Sure.
have a hard time doing it,
Sure.
and he helps them reframe their brain to get them to do stuff. So it is the personal development. When you talk about, asset classes do different things. And so part of financial education is understanding that gold is not a way to get rich. Gold is a way to protect the wealth you have, as is
Right.
Bitcoin. Doesn't cash flow. The only way to make money on a Bitcoin is hope someone will pay more for it than you did tomorrow. That's it. Doesn't make anything, doesn't produce anything. Now, real estate, that gives value and you got rent. Stocks, that gives value, you get dividends. A business, that gives you value, you have income from sales. But Bitcoin, gold, silver, commodities, they just go up and down. They don't cash flow. So understanding the role, it isn't that gold is bad. Gold's great. I own gold and I buy it, but I buy it as a protective measure as opposed to a cash flowing measure, or
Sure.
you don't really compound gold very well unless you are a technical analyst and buy and sell high and low well. So yeah, most people don't understand investing. It's not taught in school. They think it's a capital gain game, most people. If you and I were, CNBC couldn't be more wrong. I mean, it's such entertainment, really. They need eyeballs like any other news channel, so they're going to talk about the excitement of up and the excitement of down. They're not going to talk about the boredom of compounding that takes a long time. So if you turn on CNBC, it's price, 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 price. And what went up went down. That's not how wealth is created. It's created by owning a business and producing value for people to which you make a profit. No one, like a 6 year old kid, can understand this. If I take a 6 year old kid and I say, here's a golden egg and here's a goose that lays the golden eggs, which one do you want?
Right.
A 6 year old will choose the goose instantly. I'll say, why? He says, well, when it lays the eggs, I could buy another goose that lays more eggs and I could compound. I have a whole flock of geese and a zillion eggs, but this one egg can only go up and down. No one that understands Aesop's fable says, well, I think I'll buy the goose because I think the price of the goose is going to go up next week
Right.
and I can sell the goose next week. It's always about what it produces.
Right.
And I have people who are, it just shows how bad uh, the lack of education in our country is. I was doing a webinar last week, thousands of people on the webinar. And I always tell them, talking capital letters and emojis, or I won't notice you. I'm teaching and looking at
Right.
the same time. So you better swear or do something bombastic. So I started talking about that golden goose idea, the 6 year old kid. He goes, yeah, well, show me where I get a golden goose. That's fantasy land. I was like, are you trolling me, dude? Are you living under a rock? What in the hell do you think a real estate is? It is a machine that cranks out real golden eggs, real money. What do you think a stock is? It's a machine. It is something you buy that creates real cash. I guarantee you, go buy ExxonMobil and their dividends like a buck every quarter, whatever it is, right? Go buy ExxonMobil, and just as if you bought a goose and laid a golden egg, buy ExxonMobil and it'll give you a dividend. They're real. Real
Right.
cash is produced. And they have increased their dividend every year for 35 years in a row. So I don't really worry about ups and downs of price. What do I care? That dividend's going up every year. And if
Right.
I can buy it during COVID in a crash at 40 and the dividend is $4 a year, I'm at 10% on my money right now with the stock even moving. I write some covered calls on that. I'm doubling it. Now I'm at 20% a year. There you go. Keep doing that. But you have to have education and as you said, personal development to do stuff like that.
I'm sure it's all over the map depending on the student, but when you get newcomers, well, it might even be easier with newcomers than like with someone like myself because you got to undo the stuff that we think we know. But for
Me
people
too.
learning options, as an example, you can just tell by the way I'm pausing here. I feel like it's complicated. I just do. So what do you guys
Interesting.
do? I don't know why. I'm like, I'm good with numbers, this and that, but there's something in my head when I get into puts and calls and covered calls. And I think I just haven't had the right teacher yet. But what do you guys do to break that down? And how quickly do you get people from, I'm not talking about making them
Well,
experts because they got to execute, but I
sure.
mean, to getting, capable or confident in their ability to trade.
Well, it doesn't happen in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Most of my students, I'll tell them to invest about 20 hours. You invest about 20 hours, and I'll hold you by the hand. I'll take you by and I'll walk you through it. At the end of that time, you'll be like, oh, this is actually pretty simple. So, let's tell the viewers, an option is just a fancy word for choice. So I can either do something or I can not do something. I have that choice. I can sit there and if you've ever been to Nordstrom, my wife frequents Nordstrom, and she might see something, and she doesn't know whether it's going to match the shoes, whatever the reason is. And so, hey, or maybe it's for my mother, and she wants to check something out first. Does she have the outfit? And she might say, hey, would you put this on layaway for me? Now in Europe, I got in trouble. A lady in the UK said, "Layaway, what's layaway? We don't know what that means." I said, "Well, you go to the clerk. You say, will you put my name on this pair of jeans and put it on the shelf and just hold it for me for a couple days. I may buy it, I may not." She goes, "Oh, you mean you want to put it on reserve? Reserve, layaway, and whatever it is." So all an option does is give you choices, and there's power in that. And a call option will give me a choice to buy something or not. So rather than, let's say that, you had a house, and I suspected that it might be more valuable than people think. And I say, "Hey, Ken, I see your house is $1 million. I don't know if I want to buy it yet. It's $1 million risk. It's a lot of money to buy your house for 1 million. So I'll tell you what, here is 50 grand or 5 grand or whatever, and just hold that house. Don't sell it to anyone other than me, but hold it for a month. And during that month, you say, okay, so I give you $5,000 or whatever we agree to. Now I have the choice to either buy that house at 1 million or not. And I only had to risk $5,000 to find out. Well, if I change my mind, don't want to buy it, yeah, I'm out 5 grand. But I didn't have to spend 1 million to find out. But let's say that I was kind of curious because I know your neighbor, and I know he found oil in his backyard. You're next door. You run a little drill experiment. All of a sudden, there's oil in your backyard, and now your house is worth $20 million. But I have the option to buy it for 1 million. So my option is now worth $19 million, isn't it?
Right.
So I go to Exxon. I say, look, I don't have $1 million in my pocket, but I have the rights to this $20 million property, million. Why don't you give me $19 million for my piece of paper? And I never have to own your house. So that's the long end of options. And we can get into it, but a better way to start maybe is something Robert Kiyosaki teaches. I was so angry when he taught this because, like, Andy, you know this. Why do you need him to state the obvious for you? But apparently, I needed it. Is he wrote this on a flip chart once? He said, risk is related to control. He said, the more control you have, less risk. Less control you have, more risk. And I thought to myself, if I had no control, that'd be the definition of gambling. No control. Don't know what the river card will be. Don't know where the roulette wheel will land. No control at all reduces me to gambler status. So the defining characteristic of the stock market is unpredictability. So if I buy that Apple at $235 a share, how do I know it'll go up or down? I don't really, for sure, I don't. But if I can have the option to sell it when at a certain price, or I have the option to buy it at a certain price, now I've brought some control to what I'm trying to do. And that's where I would start with people is I wouldn't trade stocks or even invest in stocks without options because what options do is give me control. Here's a great example. Um, and I have to be careful with this, giving a shout out to the people in California because they're really suffering. We should not politicize that. And no one needs to lose their home. But you know what? They could not control whether or not their house burnt down. The fire hydrants weren't working, whatever, winds blowing, whatever the circumstances were, blame who you want. But it burnt down. Well, if you have insurance, you'll be made whole eventually again. That's a much like an option, right?
Mhm.
It gives me control. I can't control that the asset burnt down, but I can control what happened to my net worth because I'm going to get compensated for it. So so that type of thinking is where options begin. And I would encourage people to put in 10, 20 hours and make that part of their financial education. Even if they don't think they want to trade options, how do they know until they learn about them?
Right.
And it helps me evaluate my real estate deals, business deals. Robert studied a lot of technical analysis just because he knows how important it is to understand trends. So yeah, we teach options, and I'll tell you another way to look at it, Ken, if you don't mind me making one more comment on
Please.
it.
Yeah.
Um, the way we make money in options is most of the time I'm a net seller. Um, Insurance companies take on risk, and we basically pay them to take the risks collectively that we won't take individually. So, for example, I don't need fire insurance on my house. It's not mandatory if the house is paid for. Bank will want you to have it, but I don't need fire insurance on my house. Why do I have it? Well, because I don't want the risk. So, whoever I bundle with, State Farm, they're getting paid to take risk. Now think about that for a minute. There's the largest buildings in Vegas are casinos, but the largest buildings on Wall Street are banks and insurance companies. And insurance companies get paid to make a lot of promises, and a few of them in California need to be kept, but everywhere else in the country, houses aren't burning, they're just collecting the money.
Right.
So the ability to have the talent to manage risk and get paid to take on other people's risks and understanding probabilities is huge. If you get that, you can move away from trying to predict the direction of a stock and you can do something technical analyst wise, much simpler. Like I can get you to 100% on this. Apple, let's say Apple's, I don't know what it is today. Let's say it's 230, whatever it is today. I don't know what it is. I haven't looked. 230. Okay. Do you think Apple's going bankrupt tomorrow?
Of course not.
Okay. Do you think it's going to double tomorrow?
Very unlikely. No.
So we can say with close to 100% confidence, approaching 100%, that Apple will be between 0 and $500 tomorrow. Yes.
Yep.
That's an extreme example, but it shows it's a lot easier to pick the range. Okay, now let's just back that off a little bit. Do you think it'll be above $5 and below 245?
Of
Yep.
course. Yeah.
Do I think it'll be above $100 but below 300? Yep.
Yes.
Do I believe it will be above 150 but above below 275? Yep. And so when you start to understand what we call standard deviation, and we start to understand where its likely range will be, and we position size properly, we can begin to position ourselves to actually make money by betting that a stock will stay in a range as opposed to a direction. And when a person learns those techniques, that's a literal dimension, right? Instead of the up or down dimension, the range approach uh, to get paid for picking a range rather than a direction. It's a totally different vein of education. So option traders can do that. And I would say that if you were, I don't know, I haven't added up, but I would say that of the options income I collect, I would say that probably 80 to 90% of the income I get on a monthly basis and that my sons make are determining ranges correctly rather than guessing the direction.
and getting the ranges just from standard deviation. So you go into it and go
and
tightening that
and
range even
and
more
other
on,
things.
yeah.
Yeah.
But on Apple as an example, if it really is at 230, and if you're, doing options for February or something, probably getting it down to 223 to 337 or something, right? And but then knowing, because of what you guys know, that there's a
Yeah.
97% chance or something, at least historically, that it's going to stay in that range. Yeah.
And the big pillar on that is if you feel you're in the 90% range, then 97% range, it's that 3% you got to learn to deal with
Yeah.
because it will happen 3% of the time, right? It's a
Right.
reality. You will be facing that 3% of the time. My range option trades, I go about 90%. So that means one out of every 10, I got to deal with something. So there's really four pillars of investing. There's something we call fundamental analysis. That's how we look at an entity. Does it have a moat? Is it going to be around? Is it strong? Is the financial statement in order? Is it growing or shrinking? Fundamental analysis is about the entity we're examining. We could run one on the United States and say, not looking too good. We
Right.
could do one on your personal financial statement, say, hey, fundamentally, Ken's on the ball. I'd loan him money. He looks good. We could do one on a corporation or a municipality. Anything with a financial statement, which is everything, a church, a charity, a school, can have a fundamental analysis done on how strong are they. The second pillar is what we're talking about is price action directions. And this is real estate, this is oil, gold, silver, corn, commodities, Bitcoin, ETFs, Apple, whatever. The third pillar is positioning, it's cash flow pillar. How am I going to take this data that I can't control and position myself in such a way to increase either my cash flow, preferably, or perhaps my net worth if you want to preserve through gold investments? That's not going to touch cash flow, but how are you going to position yourself with the asset based on fundamental and technical data? The most important pillar of the four, by far, is risk management. And this is where 401ks are so bad and where stock market gurus are so bad. This is where poor Dave Ramsey just loses his way so bad. Um, the more I listen to guys like that, the more I wonder how they became who they were. I guess they're just entertaining. I don't know. But the idea of diversification as a risk management tool is ludicrous. Um, if you don't believe that, just Google Warren Buffett's opinion on diversification. Let him teach instead of me. I will side with Warren Buffett far before I'll side with Dave Ramsey or Susie Orman.
Sure.
I would rather listen to what Warren Buffett has to say about stock investing than what a finger wagging disciplinarian would say about it. Right?
Right.
Buffett creates wealth. He doesn't say, "Oh, just be frugal." Being frugal doesn't take any creativity or education. Just quit going and eating lattes. Anyone can shake their finger and you say, quit spending so much money.
Right.
That's not creative or educational. When I can say, hey, create it. So this diversification idea is not risk management. Risk management comes by position sizing. Risk management comes by having options and being able to buy the right to sell and protect. It comes through something called delta hedging. It comes through understanding how adjustment works, and it's creative, and it's beautiful, and it can be done. You know, ask Mark Cuban if he made his billions by diversifying his stock portfolio,
Right.
or if he had one stock called Yahoo that he bought put options on and collared. Ask him how he made those billions, and he'll tell you. So don't get me going.
That's
I, I,
that.
I feel strongly about financial education. So
I hear you. No, and it shows. And thank you so much for joining us. So, when people join, do they usually connect with your team through the academy? Then is that the first
uh,
way to work with you?
you know, I don't really care what teacher people find.
Yeah.
Find the teacher that's right for you. The Cashflow Academy does not. It's not a place where people just readily go and sign up. Like what's the best academic university? It's probably like MIT, Harvard, Yale, something like that. There's an application process. There's an interview process. There's a certain seriousness of student that they've got to prove themselves long before they get taken on. So our criteria for student, I'll give you some of the criteria that we demand from a student, and we don't. It's more that we would part ways if we found this not to be the case with a
Right.
student. Number one, they have to have a passion for process that is either equal or above their greed for result. So, for example, my wife is a competitive bodybuilder, and she's got trophies laying around the house, but the trophies don't get her pumped. The process is what she desires. The discipline of the diet, the lifting of the weights. She just enjoys doing that type of stuff. So if you just want to be a student of mine because you want to get rich, I'm not going to be a good teacher for you. But if you love financial education, that means you're going to show up to class, you're going to learn something. If you love, like if you visualize, I don't want to do Netflix as much this year. I don't want to scroll on Instagram. Those are not the best use of my time. I would rather trade that time by learning from someone who's done this a long time and really learn a lot more. That's the type of person, because then I know results take care of themselves.
Right.
When a guy comes to me and says, "Yeah, how much can I make in 2 weeks? Can I make $40,000 out of nothing?" That's a waste of our time at the Cashflow Academy. The other thing people need to understand is I have a quiz that every student has to take and get 100% on. I think it's funny that a doctor could pass a test and get like an 80 on it. I'm like, what about the other 20?
Totally.
you know, hey, how'd you do? I go, got a 94 on my test. I'm like, so there's 6% of the stuff you don't know, and you're going to cut me
Yeah.
open. So,
Yeah, I
so
fell
I,
asleep during the sewing the
yeah.
patient up after the surgery part, but I got the rest right, right? Like we got all
So
these organs jammed back in there, you know?
where's my watch, by the way?
Yeah.
So, so I have a little quiz people take once they enroll, and if they can't, and it's on temperament, it's on risk, it's on that, and if they can't do that, then we just refund any tuition they paid to get in, and we say, you know what, or they can keep trying until they get there. So, the best way to start with us is to start with free stuff, kind of get a style, take it's like Costco. Before you buy the thing, always take the free sample before you buy the thing. So I think, let me see, I think my producer had talked to you guys, and we have a little link
Oh, cool. I'll
um,
drop it in the show notes or we
that
will.
that we can put if I can find it here. Let's see. Do we have that link, Mars? I'll ask my little producer to text that to me or whatever. And let me see. I'll bring it up on my computer, perhaps. Let's see. Can you send it to me real fast? Hopefully he has an edit team or people can just tell me what it is out loud, Mars. Is it, how about this? Thecashflowacademy.com/leaders lab. How's that sound?
Perfect. And we'll put
Why
it
don't I
in the
put
notes
that?
too.
Why don't I copy and paste that in our chat here? I'll figure out how to do this on the fly. How does
There you
that
go.
look right
Got
there?
it.
I'll click on it and
Looks
make sure
great.
it's operational at this point. So what I
It
have
works.
is I have a little free ebook people can start with. It's called Rat Race Escape Plan. It's designed for people that want to escape their current situation, go to a new one. The best financial plans are not plans that come from financial advisor necessarily. The best plans resemble battle plans. The best financial plans resemble escape plans. The best financial plans resemble blueprints or house plans where you have a vision of what you're going to build before you build it. A 401k has none of those things. It's not a battle plan. It's not an escape plan. It's certainly not a blueprint, because people just put in money and get it's like walking to the job site with a shovel and a hammer and thinking a house is going to be built. So the rat race escape plan is the beginnings of how to create a step-by-step map or pathway to get to where you want to be financially. And that's a great place to start for free. And then you decide at that point if you're going to become a serious student. People that are interested in success read books. People who are committed to success get coaches, teachers, and mentors. So if you want to win a gold medal, reading a book on swimming doesn't do it. Get a coach. If you're interested in swimming, read a book on it. So if you're interested in success, start with that book and then decide if you want to really be committed to gold medal success. And at that point, then you can look for teachers and mentors and really get serious about your education.
I dig it. And what's nice for the people that are listening or watching is that that information is there for you to access for free, right? To
For
dip your
sure.
toe in and
Yeah.
start self-educating. So amazing, Andy.
Got
Really
to
good. Go ahead.
got to date before you get married on both sides for sure.
That's it. Well, it's really good to meet you. Thanks so much for being on the show today.
Ken, you're as delightful as you can be. Thanks for shouldering the podcast. And as I say, people, if you put a nickel in me, I'll keep going for a while. So hopefully you can edit this down to something watchable and
Oh,
manageable for
we
your
don't edit
listeners.
anything. We're letting it
Uh,
rip, man. So
oh, that's awesome stuff. But just delight. What a privilege it is to be a student.
yeah,
You mentioned, teachers that use a lot of fancy jargon to show everyone how smart they are. I love being a fellow student with people side by side, whacking the weeds together through the jungle together, rather than acting like I'm on some pinnacle, infallible. And we're in this together. Um, we're all students. We're all learning stuff new. Let's go through the jungle together. So thank you
awesome.
so much.
Thank you, sir. Take care.